My sister stole my identity to buy a mansion and blamed me when the FBI knocked my name as Vanessa Reed. And 3 years ago, I thought I had finally built the life I deserved. At 34, I was working as a senior cybersecurity analyst for a defense contractor outside Washington, D.C. My apartment overlooked the Potomac River. I drove a modest Lexus. I maxed out my retirement accounts, paid my taxes early, and spent most weekends drinking overpriced coffee while fixing security vulnerabilities for companies too careless to protect themselves. I liked order, predictability, control, which is probably why what happened to me nearly destroyed my sanity. Because when your entire career revolves around preventing fraud, identity theft, and cybercrime, and then your own sister steals your identity right under your nose. People don't just question your judgment, they question your entire existence. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was halfway through reviewing an internal breach report when my phone buzzed with a fraud alert from my bank. Chase alert. Large wire transfer initiated, $48,600. I frowned immediately. I hadn't wired anything. At first, I assumed phishing scam, fake text, common tactic, then another notification arrived. Chase alert, international transaction approved. My stomach tightened. I logged into my banking app. The balance stared back at me like a horror movie jump scare. Checking account, nearly drained. Savings account, empty. I froze, literally froze. Every cybersecurity training protocol I had ever taught clients suddenly abandoned my brain. My fingers went numb as I stared at the transaction history. Wire transfers, luxury retailers, private aviation deposits, high-end furniture companies. And one payment that made my chest go cold. Sterling Oaks Realty, $187,000 down payment. I whispered, "What the hell?" My manager noticed my face immediately. "Vanessa, I need to make a call." I walked into an empty conference room and dialed Chase Fraud Services with shaking hands. The representative sounded calm at first. That changed after verifying my identity. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "these transactions were authenticated through multi-factor verification. That's impossible. They originated from an authorized device." "No, they didn't, according to our records." "They did." I felt heat rising into my face. "I work in cybersecurity," I snapped. "Someone cloned credentials." There was silence. Then, "Ma'am, the authorized device is listed as an iPhone connected to your family plan." My blood ran cold. Family plan. There were only 2 other people still attached to that account, my mother and my younger sister, Alyssa. I hung up and immediately called Alyssa. No answer. Again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Then I opened Instagram, and there she was. My 28-year-old sister stood beside an infinity pool in Miami, holding champagne in one hand and designer shopping bags in the other. Behind her sat a white Bentley. Caption, "Manifestation works, blessed dream life." I zoomed in. My pulse started hammering. The Bentley dealership plate was from Virginia, not Florida. Then I noticed something else. On her left wrist was a platinum Cartier bracelet. I knew exactly how much those cost, because 2 weeks earlier I had looked at one online before deciding it was financially irresponsible. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car outside my office hyperventilating, because deep down I already knew. Alyssa had always been reckless with money, always. At 19, she maxed out 3 credit cards buying luxury makeup she couldn't afford. At 23, she got evicted from an apartment after spending rent money on Coachella VIP tickets. At 26, she convinced our parents to co-sign a business loan for a boutique clothing company that collapsed in 8 months. But this was different. This was calculated, sophisticated, and terrifying. I drove straight to my parents' house in Maryland. My mother answered the door smiling. That smile disappeared instantly when she saw my face. "What happened? Where is Alyssa?" "She's in Florida." I pushed past her into the kitchen. My father looked up from the newspaper. "Vanessa, did you know Alyssa bought a mansion?" Silence. My mother's expression shifted too fast. Fear, then guilt, then forced calm. "It's not a mansion," she said quietly. I stared at her. "You knew." My father folded the newspaper slowly. "Sit down." "No." "Vanessa, did she steal my identity?" Neither of them answered. And in that silence, my entire childhood suddenly made horrible sense. Alyssa had always been protected. Always rescued. When she crashed Dad's car drunk at 17, they blamed the bad influence friend beside her. When she stole from Mom's purse, they called it stress. When she lied, manipulated, cried, or destroyed things, there was always an explanation. But me. I was expected to absorb everything quietly because I was the responsible one. My mother reached for my hand. "Honey, it got out of control." I yanked my hand away. "She did steal my identity," my father sighed heavily. "She intended to pay it back." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't process the insanity. "She drained my accounts. She was desperate," Mom whispered. "For a Bentley? No, for stability." I slammed my palms onto the counter. "She committed federal crimes. She said the banks approved everything. Because she used my name." Mom started crying instantly. Classic. Alyssa detonated bombs. Mom cried, Dad minimized. And somehow I became the villain. "She said you wouldn't even notice at first," Mom admitted softly. That sentence hit harder than the fraud itself, because it meant Alyssa had studied me, my income, my savings, my lifestyle. She knew exactly how much she could steal before triggering alarms. That wasn't impulsive. That was predatory. I looked at my father. "How long?" He looked away. "Almost a year." A year, my knees nearly gave out. "She's been using my identity for a year." "She said it started with one credit card," Mom whispered. "Then things spiraled." I couldn't breathe. One credit card became luxury vacations. Cars, loans, real estate. Then the worst thought hit me. I pulled out my phone and opened my credit monitoring app. My credit score had dropped nearly 200 points. There were accounts I didn't recognize, mortgages, lines of credit, corporate filings. Then I saw the total estimated debt attached to my identity. $1.4 million. I physically staggered backward. Mom rushed toward me. "Vanessa, don't touch me." For the first time in my life, my father looked genuinely afraid. "You can't report her." I stared at him. "She's your sister. She committed identity theft. She'll go to prison." I looked him dead in the eye. "She should." Mom burst into louder tears. "You'd destroy her future," I almost screamed. "She destroyed my future." But they didn't see it that way. To them, Alyssa was still the fragile baby of the family. And I was still the dependable daughter expected to sacrifice herself quietly. Dad lowered his voice. "We can fix this privately." "No, we can't. She'll sell the house." "WHAT house?" Silence again. Then Mom whispered, "The mansion is in your name." That was the moment everything changed. Because suddenly I realized something horrifying. Legally, I own the mansion. And every crime attached to it pointed directly at me. The FBI arrived 6 days later. 2 agents walked into my office while half my department watched. If humiliation had a physical form, it would feel like that moment. "Vanessa Reed?" "Yes. I'm Special Agent Collins." "This is Agent Ramirez. We need to ask you questions regarding financial fraud and interstate wire activity." Every head in the office turned toward me. I felt my career collapsing in real time. Inside the conference room, they laid photographs across the table. The mansion, the Bentley, wire transfers, bank signatures, loan documents, all under my name. Agent Collins leaned forward. "Would you like to explain how a cybersecurity analyst earning under $300,000 annually purchased over $2 million in assets within 11 months? "I didn't." "Your credentials were used. My identity was stolen." "By who?" I hesitated. And that hesitation almost ruined me, because protecting family had been conditioned into me since childhood. But Alyssa wasn't protecting me. She was preparing me to take the fall. I swallowed hard. "My sister." The agents exchanged a look. Then Agent Ramirez slid another photo toward me. Alyssa exiting the mansion carrying shopping bags. She claims you allowed her to manage properties on your behalf. My stomach dropped. She what? She states you used her accounts because your security clearance prevented direct ownership. I couldn't even speak for a second. It was genius. Evil, but genius. Alyssa had built an entire narrative where I was the mastermind laundering money through family members. And because I worked in cybersecurity and defense contracting, it sounded believable. Agent Collins watched my face carefully. Miss Reed, if you're telling the truth, we need proof immediately. I handed them my phone. Check every message between us. For 3 hours, I showed them everything. Ignored repayment requests, conversations about her financial problems, messages where she begged me for money. Then I logged into my cloud backups. That's when I found the mistake Alyssa made. 6 months earlier, she had accidentally synced documents to our shared family iCloud folder, including scanned fake signatures, loan applications, photos of my passport, and a spreadsheet titled, Vanessa Profile. Agent Ramirez opened it silently. Inside were detailed notes about me. My salary, my social security number, my security question answers, even behavioral patterns. Doesn't check mail daily. Rarely answers unknown calls. Asterisk travels often for work. Asterisk high credit potential. I watched Agent Collins' face harden. This was organized, I whispered. I know. Then came the sentence that shattered whatever innocence I still carried. We believe your sister may be connected to a larger fraud network. I blinked. What? They explained everything slowly. Luxury property fraud rings had been operating across several states, using stolen identities to purchase real estate before flipping assets through shell companies. The FBI had been tracking suspicious transactions for months, and my identity was tied to multiple investigations, including money routed through offshore accounts. I nearly threw up. This can't be real. Agent Collins looked almost sympathetic. Miss Reed, your sister didn't just steal from you. She became part of something much bigger. That night, I drove to the mansion. I needed to see it myself. The property sat behind private gates in Northern Virginia, 3 stories, glass walls, imported stone, the kind of house influencers pretend to own online. Lights glowed from inside. Music echoed through the backyard. There was a party happening, using my name. I parked across the street shaking with rage. Then I saw Alyssa through the windows laughing beside people drinking champagne. Perfect hair, designer dress. No guilt, no fear, just entitlement. I marched to the front door and shoved it open. Music stopped almost instantly. Alyssa turned. Her smile vanished. Vanessa! I looked around the massive living room. This is what you spent my life on. People started quietly leaving. Alyssa forced a laugh. Can we not do this here? You stole MY identity. She rolled her eyes. It's complicated. The FBI came to MY office. That finally rattled her. Wait, they talked to you already? I stared at her. Already? That word told me everything. She knew they were coming. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You need to calm down. Calm down. You're making this worse. I actually laughed. You framed me. I protected you. My jaw dropped. Protected me from what? You don't understand how these people work. My blood went cold. These people, not banks, not lenders, people. I realized then that Alyssa was terrified, not of prison. Of someone else. I lowered my voice. What did you get involved in? She looked toward the hallway nervously. Then whispered, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Before I could answer, a man appeared from another room. Tall, expensive suit, cold eyes. Alyssa, he said evenly. Who's this? Every survival instinct in my body activated instantly, because Alyssa looked scared of him, not annoyed, scared. This is my sister, she said quietly. The man smiled politely at me. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind predators wear before deciding whether you're dangerous. I'm Marcus. I didn't shake his hand. He glanced between us. Family disagreements can become messy. I stared directly at him. You're laundering money through stolen identities. The room went silent. Marcus smiled again, but his eyes changed. You should be careful with accusations. Alyssa grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. Vanessa, stop! That terrified me more than anything, because Alyssa never backed down from confrontation. Ever. But now she looked panicked. Marcus adjusted his watch calmly. I think your sister should head home. I pulled my arm free. No. I think federal agents would love to meet you. For 1 second, his mask slipped. Cold, dangerous. Then the smile returned. You work in cybersecurity, correct? My heart skipped. He knew exactly who I was. I'd hate for misunderstandings to affect your clearance. Threat, direct threat. Alyssa started crying. Please just leave. And suddenly I understood the truth. Alyssa wasn't innocent, but she also wasn't in control anymore. She had opened a door she couldn't close. I backed toward the entrance slowly. Marcus smiled pleasantly. Drive safely, Vanessa. I left immediately and called the FBI from my car. Within 48 hours, everything exploded. Federal raids, asset seizures, financial freezes. News helicopters outside the mansion. Marcus wasn't just a fraudster. He was tied to an interstate criminal organization using identity theft, shell corporations, and luxury real estate to clean millions of dollars. And Alyssa? She had recruited victims, including me. Apparently, she had a talent for gathering personal data from friends, relatives, ex-boyfriends, and social contacts. The FBI later discovered over 30 stolen identities connected to accounts she helped open. 30? I wasn't special. I was convenient. My parents lost their minds when Alyssa was arrested. Mom called me screaming. How could you do this to your sister? I answered coldly. She did this to herself. She's terrified. I was terrified when federal agents thought I was a criminal. Dad got on the phone next. You should have warned us. She framed me. She's still family. That sentence finally broke something inside me. Because all my life, family meant I absorbed damage quietly while Alyssa escaped consequences. Not anymore. I cut them off that day, completely. No calls, no visits, nothing. Then came the hardest part, rebuilding my life. Do people know what identity theft actually does to someone? It's not just financial, it's psychological. Every account becomes suspicious. Every email feels dangerous. Every unknown number spikes your heart rate. For months, I barely slept. I froze my credit, changed every password, installed monitoring systems on everything. And still, I felt violated, because identity theft isn't just stealing money, it's stealing certainty. Meanwhile, the investigation kept growing. The FBI uncovered encrypted communications linking Marcus's network to international fraud operations. Properties purchased under fake identities across 4 states. Millions in illegal transfers. And buried inside it all, my sister. Alyssa eventually took a plea deal. 12 years federal prison. Reduced sentence for cooperation. My mother blamed me publicly. Told relatives I abandoned the family. Some actually believed her, until the evidence became public. Fake passports, forgery kits, dozens of victims. Then suddenly the narrative changed. Relatives who defended Alyssa stopped calling. Family friends avoided eye contact. Because deep down, everyone realized something horrifying. Alyssa didn't accidentally ruin my life. She strategically cannibalized it. 2 years later, I received a letter from her prison counselor. Alyssa wanted to speak to me. I ignored it. Then another arrived. Then another. Finally, curiosity won. I agreed to one monitored visit. Seeing her behind glass shocked me. She looked older, smaller, human. Not the glamorous social media princess who drank champagne beside Bentleys. Just exhausted. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. I waited. You were supposed to be temporary. I stared at her. What was? The identity stuff. You stole over $1 million. Tears filled her eyes. Marcus said nobody would get hurt. I almost laughed. You destroyed my career. I know. I lost relationships. I know. I can never trust people the same way again." She broke down, crying completely then. And for the first time in our lives, nobody rescued her. No mom, no dad, no excuses, just consequences. Then she said something I still think about constantly. "You know why I picked you?" I didn't answer. "Because you were the only person I thought would forgive me." That sentence haunted me for months afterward, because she was right. For most of my life, I would have forgiven her, absorbed it, protected her, explained her behavior away. But betrayal changes people, especially betrayal from blood. I stood to leave. Alyssa looked up desperately. "Do you hate me?" I thought carefully before answering. "No." And that was true. Hatred requires emotional attachment. What I felt instead was grief. Grief for the sister I thought existed. Grief for the family I spent decades protecting. Grief for the version of myself that believed loyalty guaranteed safety. Before I walked away, Alyssa whispered one last thing. "Mom still blames you." I paused, then nodded slowly. "Of course she does. Because some families would rather destroy the honest person than confront the guilty one." But here's what I finally learned. Being the responsible child doesn't mean sacrificing yourself forever. And loving family doesn't mean allowing them to bury you alive. Today, I consult for financial fraud victims across the country. I help people rebuild after identity theft. I teach corporations how social engineering destroys lives. And every time someone says, "I never thought my own family would do this," I understand exactly what they mean. Because sometimes the most dangerous strangers share your last name. 6 months after my final visit with Alyssa, I received another call from the FBI. At first, my stomach dropped the same way it always did whenever an unknown federal number appeared on my phone. Trauma doesn't disappear quickly. Agent Collins' voice sounded calmer this time. "Good news, Vanessa. The Department of Justice officially cleared your name from all remaining financial associations tied to the case." I closed my eyes slowly. For 3 years, I had lived under investigation shadows. Even after proving my innocence, there were audits, reviews, interviews, and endless paperwork tied to my security clearance. One accusation can follow you forever, especially in cybersecurity, especially around federal contracts. "You're fully cleared," he repeated gently. Those words hit harder than I expected, because for years I had been surviving, not living, surviving. After the call ended, I sat alone in my apartment staring out at the river while Washington traffic moved below like nothing had ever happened. And for the first time since all of it began, I cried. Not from sadness, from exhaustion, the kind that settles into your bones after carrying betrayal for too long. A week later, I received one final surprise. The government had liquidated several seized assets connected to the fraud operation. Because some properties and accounts were directly tied to identity theft under my name, I qualified for financial restitution. It wasn't enough to erase the damage, but it was enough to breathe again, enough to restart. I used the money carefully, paid legal debts, rebuilt investments, bought a quiet townhouse outside the city with security systems so advanced even I joked it looked like a CIA safe house. But this time, everything inside belonged to me, legally, honestly, peacefully. My parents never truly apologized. Mom still sent occasional emotional emails blaming circumstances. Dad tried once to reconnect over dinner, but halfway through the meal he said, "She's still your sister." And I realized then that some people never change. So I paid the bills, stood up, and left politely. Not angrily, not dramatically, just permanently, because closure doesn't always come through forgiveness. Sometimes closure comes through distance. As for Alyssa, she remains in federal prison. I heard she now teaches financial literacy classes to inmates. Irony has a cruel sense of humor. Sometimes reporters still contact me asking for interviews about the case. The mansion identity fraud sister. That's what tabloids called it. But they always want the dramatic parts. The raids. The luxury cars. The betrayal. Nobody talks enough about the aftermath. The paranoia. The loneliness. The feeling of looking at your own signature and wondering if it's really yours anymore. Identity theft steals more than money. It steals safety, trust, reality itself. But it also taught me something unexpected. You can survive people you never imagined hurting you. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop saving those determined to destroy themselves. Last month, I stood in my kitchen drinking coffee while sunlight poured through windows I paid for with my own honest work. No lies, no stolen accounts, no fear of a knock at the door, just peace. Real peace. The kind I spent years believing I didn't deserve because I was too busy fixing everyone else's disasters. Then my phone buzzed with a message from a new fraud victim I'd been helping. It read, "Thank you. Everyone thought I was crazy until you believed me." I stared at that message for a long moment, then smiled softly, because maybe that's how healing works. Not by erasing what happened, but by becoming the person you once needed yourself. And as I locked my front door that night, I realized something important. My sister stole my identity. But she never got to keep my life. The end.